So today what we're going to talk about is the integration we have with our recent integrator, Manna Irrigation. So using satellite imagery, they do sensor-free irrigation recommendations. We use our API to throw data back and forth. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But first, I'll start off with those of you who are new here and they don't know what drop control or WiseCon is, or Manna. I'm going to do a brief description of what we do, what we provide for all our growers, and then we'll go into the next presentation with Havav. He's going to be the director. He is the director of sales and marketing for Manna, and I'll introduce him right upon the finishing of my presentation. Background on WiseCon. We were founded in 2006. We're a Chilean-based company, and we've been in California or the United States since 2015. Since then, we've accumulated equipment across 200,000 acres with over 8,000 nodes deployed. Nodes are the little RTU units that we sell. We have over 20 distributors in the United States. 15 of those are in California, and that number just keeps growing. We've even got, stuff in the Pacific Northwest. We've got stuff in the Southeast region with Georgia, Florida, Kansas. We're pretty much everywhere now. I know we're in 5 different countries with over 2,000 users. So 2,000 people who are, logging into drop control or have access to drop control, which is our irrigation scheduling and monitoring platform. We do have a support and a warehouse, support team and a warehouse in Fresno, as well as Chile. Today, we're going to be talking about the Manna Irrigation API sharing. So we're an open API with third-party integrators. We can throw data across from either our sensors, their sensors. We can pull data back and forth. One example would be executing an irrigation recommendation. That's something in technology and automation that's come a long way. So basically how it works, it's a reliable irrigation monitoring and control platform. You can connect to any sensor, operate wireless valves in the field, pumps, injection systems, VFDs, all of it's through an easy use online software or mobile app. So you can see here just kind of how it's going about. You can use your app or use drop control on the desktop, schedule all your irrigations, do everything you need to do. You can schedule them here. Oh, I'm having a little audio issue. Fix that. All right, should be a little clearer now. So using Amazon Web Services, that's where all of our data is stored in the cloud. So you schedule your irrigations, goes to the cloud, and then it goes to a gateway unit. The gateway unit is using cellular communication protocols, so using either AT&T or Verizon. It sends out the commands to the other nodes in the field. There's only one gateway, usually per ranch or per farm. And with the nodes, they all use a 900 megahertz radio frequency to talk to each other. So those nodes will be gathering data from a soil moisture sensor or a temperature sensor, and they'll be sending them all to the gateway, which then goes back to the cloud. And that's how it's displayed on your phone or on your laptop, desktop in the office. All the data is coming in at about 15 minutes. Every 15 minutes, we're getting new data populated. For frost control and other alerts and alarms, we can get that down to the minute, 5 minutes. Just depends really what the grower wants to see and what you guys want to do. So the basics of it is we can do start and stop for the pump. Over here, we can be measuring, pressure before and after the filter station. We can do reservoir level control and monitoring, as well as fertigation tank, fert tank level monitoring. We can do wireless valves in the field. So some systems may have these already in place, and they're usually designed nowadays they're usually designed, thinking that automation might be there in the future. So they'll leave these valves out here. They've got little tri-selectors on them, so you can have them open, closed, or in auto. We can open those. We do weather station readings. So we do provide readings for like Davis weather stations. Same thing with soil moisture sensors. We also provide those. And then all of that, like I said, is all done from either your phone tablet, or the desktop or laptop in the office. So we're composed of our hardware or software. I'll go a little bit in depth about the hardware right now. So our little RTUs that are in the field. The X1 right there in the middle is going to be our flagship node. So monitoring and control, that can be starting and stopping a pump, opening and closing valves, all while reading a weather station, a soil moisture probe, barometer, all that kind of stuff. Switches, it can pretty much do everything. The M1 is just a monitoring node. The monitoring node is just like any other data logger. It's a competitive price, but also it can read a weather station, pressure switches, soil moisture sensor. It can have a lot of different sensors loaded all onto it. And that one can either be a gateway by itself, you just need a singular node for one probe, or it can be used as a radio node in the field along with the X1 or C1. The C1 is going to be the whole fertigation irrigation controller node. So at the pump station, this guy can either be operated via Bluetooth or through, your phone, the desktop. And you can schedule 5 different pump systems with different fertigation pumps. You can do 20 plus valves, pressure transducers. It's a lot of what the X1 can do, just jumped up a little bit more. It can do a lot more in terms of control. Software, drop control, so our WiseCon platform. You can see over here in the corner, our online management system. It is the drop control app, or we do have a WASP free app. And there's also this third-party platform. So that's kind of what we're talking about today with these API integrations. People can be sending in their irrigation recommendations, based on dendrometers or other AI or analytics in the field. They can send that schedule or recommendation over to drop control, and then drop control can actuate it in the field. So we have the RTUs and the hardware in the field that's going to kick on the pump, run it for the desired duration or time, and it's going to execute that in the field and then give feedback to the cloud. And then other third-party integrators can take that feedback and throw it onto their platform to make more irrigation recommendations. That's a little bit of what we're going to talk about today with Manna specifically. So right here comes into Amazon Web Services, just like I was explaining on the last graphic, comes to our singular gateway, goes out into the field, sends different commands, and these guys are getting data from either the probes, transducers, and they're coming all the way back to the gateway, sending data to the cloud, and then uploading the data onto your screen. Go a little bit in depth on the web page. So the first screen, usually that a lot of guys are taking a look at, is the map or node layout. From here, they can see which blocks are irrigating, what the status is of their soil moisture, which blocks have any alerts, alarms, any nodes that are out. You can all see that from here. All of these different nodes have GPS locations, so you can find them in the field. Pretty easy way to schedule. So you can do it either by end date and time, volume, and duration. Also add fertilizer injections here. You can add multiple throughout the duration. So if you wanted to do a 24-hour irrigation, you can technically set, 3 or 4 different fertilizer injections, whatever you need to do. Also with acid injections, so you can irrigate to a pH set point. You even have little boxes here to clean out the lines beforehand and after the acid injection. Duration, your hours, date and time is very specific if you need to get it down to the minute. Volume, inches, if you need to put out a 1/4 inch of water, an inch of water, you can definitely do that. We just have to make sure that your flow meter and the acreage on your farm is correct, because that's the calculation it'll use to get your volume. A lot of what we're doing now is the templates and programs are trying to get more growers used to that part of it. So creating these templates basically shows you a schedule of what's going to happen throughout the day, or every 2 days or 3 days. But it's giving you a template for what's going to irrigate, what block for that day, And then the program is setting it for a time or a length. So that one template is going to activate so many days throughout the entire duration of the month. So if you have an irrigation plan for the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month, 1 week, couple days, it just really depends on what you're looking for. We can customize those to end and start anytime. This is a daily view, so you can look at your pulse irrigations on a daily scale from 0 to 23. All of it's in military time. Everything on top is what was scheduled, and everything on bottom is what actually happened in the field. So using pressure switches or flow meters or other pressure readings or data, we can kind of truth what actually happened in the field. Here is the schedule on a weekly view. So Monday to Sunday, we've got all our irrigations there. And you can click on them and they'll all have details. Right here on the left is your zone or your block that it's in. We also do the operation feedback. So like I said earlier, the real irrigation is what's on bottom. All the volume is right there. So how many inches you put out versus what was scheduled. And it'll give you a volume difference as well as your irrigation flow. So this is what we actually read in the field. It was about 1100. And what they thought they were supposed to be operating at was about 1200. This can give you or the grower an idea of if my pump is running efficiently or not, or it's not getting out as much flow as I thought so. We have our flow meter readings. So we have a lot of custom charts that growers can look at their flow and they can look at the entire duration of their irrigations. So you have the weekly volume. So from the 14th to the 21st, that was our volume in acre feet. Accumulated volume. So this red line just keeps growing. And then we can see the flow meter readings. You can see the flow meter when the pump's on or off. More stuff and sensors to truth the irrigations that are happening and executing via our hardware in the field. We also do reporting. So this is one example of a report. We have a couple different ones. This will show you, your total events for certain durations. So we're looking at from the 1st of August to October. We can see we had 19 irrigations, 7.3 acre feet with a total run time. Flushing is something that's coming out later. Here we can see the statistics. Irrigation events, 100%, 99.9 of them were executed. That difference is within a matter of a few seconds. We have the total volume. We hit it correctly at 72% and the desired acre feet. We also have a mobile app, so available on for Android or for iPhone. It'll show you stuff like what's actually happening in the field. So I can see all my historical data. Before you go to the field in the morning, you can just look at what happened the next day. You can click your calendar and see what's scheduled in the future. You can also see current soil moisture levels in your ranch. You can also see historical data on ET and how you irrigated versus the ET data. And like I said earlier, the map's going to give you what's currently watering, where your soil moisture is. So we have all these different blocks here. All these little droplet icons are going to be irrigations that are currently running. We've talked to a lot of growers. Specifically, this case, it was a grower of ours out of Madeira. He saw his yield increase between 5 and 10% and save about 30% of his water compared to normal or the traditional methods that he was using. And he did in this season even lose a well. Running, irrigations 10 to 12 times a day for certain blocks just to keep the water a little more shallow, but to keep enough water on the field to have a good yield. We have a couple different API integrations, so Powwow, Farmit, Swim, but today we are focusing on Manna. So how we interact with that third-party integrator is going to be through the integrator, the client, us, and then our dealer. So we don't sell grower direct. We do go through irrigation dealers. So anyone that's local, you can request them to us and we can see if they're already a current dealer or go in the process of making them a dealer. Here's that API that I was talking about earlier. So we have irrigations that were proposed by the API. Growers come in here, they can hit a mass confirm button, confirms all of those, and then they run. And you can use the operation feedback, like I showed you previously, to report on what was actually happening in the field. The key points here is that the API is bidirectional. So they throw data our way, we throw data their way. If they want to see what actually happened in the field, then they can grab data from us, see how many inches were applied, how many acre feet were applied, and they can use that to show an accumulated amount for their system. This is kind of closing the loop with irrigation execution. So there's the recommendation, we've got soil probes in the field, or we've got satellite imagery, so we can see the water content in the field. We know what we're supposed to be doing, but how do we make it execute? So that's where we kind of come in with our expertise in the automation side, and we close that loop. And this is also not our first rodeo. We've got 7 different API integrations, and that's just this is what I was talking about with the Manna side of stuff. They're going to be looking at the irrigation feedback. So they're going to be pulling data from us, wanting to know the entire applied irrigation compared to, evapotranspiration. So here we've just got a little graphic of what our chart is going to look like for our growers. Blue bars signify the irrigations and the yellow ones signify the evapotranspiration. See a data summary on the right. I believe that's for a month or 2 weeks of data. So we can see the total applied inches. We can see the total acre feet, irrigation run times, the irrigation count, and that's all from a quick snapshot. We have our weather feedback. So compare the ETO to temperature to predict your ETO. That's kind of what growers are doing now. So they'll look at it and say, okay, well, since we're not forecasting the ETO, growers can look here and say if tomorrow's going to be maybe about 70, I can plan on it having, this much ETO in inches. So they kind of plan out how long they're going to run their irrigation that way. Where Manna comes in is they kind of take over and they're making an irrigation model for growers to kind of follow. ET data here on our platform comes either from a local CIMI station, which is a California Weather Service where growers can get free data sent to them with ET, or we got it from a local weather station. So using temperature, humidity, solar radiation, wind speed, all of that plays a factor in a calculation for the ET. So some stuff on the Manna API integration, they take the applied irrigations and they input it into an irrigation model. They use that updated irrigation data for their future irrigation recommendations. They take satellite imagery of the water content measurements.
So thanks, Daryl, and welcome everyone. My name is Hovav. It's a pretty tough Israeli name, I know. So I'm based in Israel, born and raised in Israel. I grew up in a kibbutz, if you know what that means. That's a small farming community. So I have, my farming background back in the days. Then spent most of my mature life in the Israeli high-tech industry, and then I came back to ag happily, and to actually, merge the technology in agriculture worlds, and that's what we do in Manna. We use technology in order to drive or improve, optimize irrigation decisions. Manna is a relatively new ag tech company. We're 4 years in the business. Manna is owned by a larger, actually number 2 drip irrigation provider in the world, Reviewless Irrigation. So we're in good company. Let's put it this way. Based in Israel, but we work in actually globally now for 12 or 13 countries, And yeah, and recently we partnered with WiseCon, both in technically and also business-wise. So I'm happy to be here and share with you the Manna part after Daryl presented the way it looks like from the WiseCon point of view. So I'll use a few slides, not too many, and then we'll actually take a look at the software itself. It's going to be a live system demonstration. So stay with me. It's not going to take too long. Okay. Just in order to put us all on the same page or in the context of what we do. So the problem that we try to solve is the irrigation decision dilemma, or irrigation decision problem, or the irrigation schedule, meaning how much and when should we irrigate the crop in order to get optimal water use efficiency. That's yield per water we invest in this crop. That's what we do. The decision part later on, as Daryl said, the execution and monitoring of the actual irrigation is done by WiseCon in this case. So we focus our efforts on perfecting the decision itself. I assume you all know the benefits of irrigating correctly. We all know that under irrigation is not good. The plants will not develop properly and will not produce their optimal yield. But also over irrigation is not good either. You can damage the roots. You can wash down nutrients down and away from the root zone. Plants may develop over vegetation instead of the reproduction elements of the plants. And at the end of the day, you pay too much on energy and water costs. So there is this very sneaky optimum point right there in the middle. And that's what we try to do, help growers identify this point by presenting them with very concrete and educated recommendation. You need to irrigate that much on Tuesday. There are a few different techniques already in the market for helping with irrigation scheduling. It's as old as a problem as irrigation itself. So, the first one is based on tradition, intuition, experience. Most growers do have this kind of experience, but we all know it's not as scientific maybe, and there's room for optimization there. There are some protocols or manuals to help growers decide. These are mainly ET-based tables, water tables, crop coefficient tables. They are a good baseline, but they're not really current to my specific field, my specific crop today. There are many very good technologies for proximate sensing, let's call them, soil sensors, plant sensors on the fruit, on the leaves, in the trunk, in the soil. Many good ways of measuring what's actually going on in the field. Many people see that or find it hard to make those devices or technologies work, and there's a lot of maybe maintenance and cost involved with it. And also in many fields, there could be a great deal of variability. And if you kind of monitor just a single point, it may not represent the whole field. What we're trying to propose here is another approach. All of these approaches are valid and viable. We developed this new approach for irrigation scheduling, which is based on remote sensing. So using satellite imagery, look at the entire field, analyze and provide the water needs of the plants, and do all that without the need for additional hardware installed in your field. If you already have the infrastructure by Wisecon or something else, you can connect it to Manna, as we will see, but you don't have to add any additional hardware or devices. So that's what we do. It's a software-only solution that provides daily irrigation recommendations and crop monitoring satellite imagery. It's all for better water use efficiency. It is delivered through either a web application or mobile apps on your smartphone. It's easy to use and set up, since you don't need to install anything. And it will provide you with the optimal irrigation schedule decision. First, it is based on the actual crop water usage or water uptake, and it takes the whole field or the whole block into account, as well as all the other aspects of the irrigation decision. Value of using Manna. First of all, you get to or close to the optimal irrigation schedule. You improve your water use efficiency, reduce the cost on water and energy, and get optimal yield. The remote crop monitoring imagery will help you quickly identify issues in your production area and respond to them in a timely manner, so you save potential yield loss. And we have many stories of problems identified like that, and then once you respond to it or make the corrective action, you save yourself a lot of trouble downstream at the end of the season. And it is relatively cost-effective or simple to operate and use. It's a subscription-based software. There are no other efforts or investments needed other than the subscription. This will be maybe the most technical slide here. I'm going to try and explain how it works. We say we can recommend daily irrigation schedules directly or correlated exactly to the crop water uptake, but without sensing anything. So I'll try to explain how this magic works. So the first step, and this is maybe the most unique thing about the Manna technology, the innovation itself, is using satellite imagery and weather science or weather data in order to measure the crop water usage. That's the crop evapotranspiration. But the actual crop water usage of every day, of every pixel, the entire field, and every day. The way we do that is those satellite images are being analyzed by our models to get the actual crop coefficient. And if you have your very personal and correct crop coefficient, not something from a protocol or from the books, and you have good reference CT in the field level, then you get really to the crop water uptake or crop water usage. So that's going to represent how much water the field is going to use or lose back to the atmosphere. That's the first step. Now we know how much water go out of the field. That feeds into this soil water content model. The plus, or what's going in, are the irrigations and rain, and what's going out is this crop water usage. Sure, there's some percolation, maybe runoff, it's been included also in the model, but the main flows of water are irrigations and rain in, crop evapotranspiration out. Once this model is kept current every day, now in order to make that a very pragmatic and actionable recommendation, there's another set of models or parameters that are being accounted for. For example, the irrigation system specifications, all of the soil parameters and salinity and quality of water, and many more, in order to really provide at the end of it a very simple recommendation, a day and amount. Now, this is where it gets interesting, or where it's connected to Wisecon platform. In order to get the actual irrigations as applied, or the operation feedback as it's called in the Wisecon platform. We've connected to Wisecon, so this soil water content is kept updated with not what was recommended or scheduled, but what was really applied in the field. And that's why it's important for us to get these correct numbers, and also to make it easier on you or users, so you don't need to update it manually or anything. So it's programmatically or automatically being fed into this model. And sure, as Daryl mentioned, there will be a closed loop where the recommendations will be shown as recommended by API in Wisecon. So you will have the Manna recommendation displayed there, and you can execute or fine-tune and change and schedule it as you see fit, but at least you have the decisions, execution, feedback, and then the recommendations and the execution are a closed loop. This part of the API is not yet available, the execution, but this part is, and we're still working on that. It will be completed shortly. Okay, a little bit of this first box of how we measure crop water usage from space or from satellite imagery. I'm sure some of or most of you know the term NDVI. NDVI stands for Normalized Difference Vegetation Index. That's an index very well known and popular in the business since the 70s of the 1970s. And it measures very, very accurately the density of vegetation. So for example, in this image, the red and yellow areas show less vegetative areas, like corn in this example. Light green, a bit more dense vegetation or corn. And the dark green will be very vigorous and dense vegetation. More vegetation represent a higher crop coefficient and therefore higher water demand or higher water usage. It's much more maybe complicated than under the hood, but in general terms, that's how the model works. For every pixel, analyzes the vegetation, water usage, and then it enables us to calculate the exact water usage of the entire block. Just a little view of some users and results that we've seen in different crops, different places in the world. In most cases, we measure the water use efficiency, yield per amount of water used, and what we want to see is improvement in water use efficiency. And as you can see, in most places, that's what we saw. Overall, this year we have, it's a bit, I think more than that, close to 2,000 users, 150,000 hectares. That's about 450 acres globally. And as I mentioned, Rivulis is Manna's parent company. Just wanted to share with you, our parent company's a global leader in drip irrigation technology. It's the second largest company in the world and over 50 years of experience in the market, really global presence in 120 countries. So we get good access to the market, but also a lot of information and intelligence from very experienced and global irrigation company. And with that, I want to switch over to a quick live product demo. So let's do that. Daryl, if you're still there, let me know if anything goes wrong on screen or audio.
All righty, will do.
All right. So as I mentioned, Manna is being provided as a software subscription. So think of Netflix or I don't know, something like that. So you register, you create your own fields and forms in your account, and then you get a username and password. You log in, you do it once, and then it remembers you, and that's what you see. This is a demo account, so I can play with the data and not interfering with anyone's irrigations, but it's the live system. So we're going to use this almonds farm in California. This is your farm page. First thing you get is weather for today, and for the next few days in the location of the farm. Now Manna comes with a built-in weather service, a hyperlocal global weather service that we contracted with a third party, but you can also switch your source if you have a local station, and Davis, as Daryl mentioned, or others, or you want to connect to a network of district or state-based or even countrywide network of stations or service, you can do it from here, but the default is our service. And then you have this, it's like a Google Earth layout of the farm. We're looking at 3 blocks in this case. Let's take a look at one of them. And when I click on a block or on a field, the first thing I'll get is the irrigation scheduling screen. As we said, that's the kind of the main course. What you see here is that there are 2 zones or 2 valves that you can control separately. In Wisecon, they're called valves. So this is the infrastructure or the architecture of your irrigation system, zone 1 and zone 2. And here you have the 2 rows, the recommendations for every zone. Zone 1, previous irrigation was on Tuesday, next irrigation is this or next Tuesday, as well as your saltwater content levels today. That's 98% out of 100% would be field capacity. And if I want to see more, I'm going to expand it here. And I'm going to get the whole calendar or scheduler in which I see irrigation events. So last Tuesday I had a 0.35 inches event, and next Tuesday similar amount. Rain events will appear here if there are any, and this would be the bars maybe similar to soil sensors or pressure charts. 100% is field capacity. Wilting point is down here, and this is the line, the readily available water. Now it's pretty cool, and I think most of the almonds are losing their leaves already. So there's not a lot of dry out here between the days. But if we'll scroll back to summer, you'll see some weeks like this. So whenever you have such a a status like that, if you don't want to let it dry more than that, you can change your irrigation events here. The initial irrigation routine can be set using the irrigation settings, either fixed days of the week or in interval of days between irrigations. And then Manna will recommend for every event how much water you need to irrigate. And if it's going to get too dry, it's going to recommend anyway for you to irrigate. So these are the irrigation scheduling functionality. It's easy to reschedule irrigation events, drag and drop. or just create new ones by clicking here. That doesn't make any sense to irrigate, but I'm just showing you the functionality. So I now created another irrigation event to fill up the profile on Wednesday. When is it? August. Now, this is the kind of the manual view. If you can see, there's a little icon here for a controller or a unit. This means that this zone is integrated or paired with a WiseCon implementation or a WiseCon unit in the field. It's not real, it's test data, but functionality is the same. So if we look at zone 2, you will see the reading of the actual irrigations coming from the drop control or the WiseCon platform. So these are actual irrigations as reported by WiseCon, entered into the Manna model. So as you can see, it influences the calculation of the next event and the amount needed. And that's why it's important for us and for the users actually to get the actual data entered here. Now, there's much more for the irrigation scheduling part. I think I'm going to stop here. There's some other settings and fine tuning and stress and rain and stuff you can do here. But in order to keep it simple, if you walk with it, you know, operationally with the mobile app, that's what you're going to see. You're going to see next irrigation event, an amount for every field, every zone. Second thing I wanted to share with you is the crop monitoring images that I mentioned earlier. So we get very frequent satellite imagery in order to analyze and calculate the water needs. But we might as well show them to growers because there's a lot of information in them that that can help growers. So remote sensing for ag, again, is not something new, but it's been provided here as, you know, I think in a very accessible way. What you see here are vegetation maps in two different scales. Let's look at this one on the right. This is a vegetation variability, pretty similar to what we've seen in the slide. Red and yellow, less vegetation, green, more dense vegetation or canopy or crop cover. And so you can see the variability in the field. Let's go back in time, and while we do that, check the frequency. So a common question is how many images I get every day, every week, etc. So you can see here it's about every 3 to 5 days, a new image. Sure, some of them will be cloudy or partly cloudy, but we work with 3 different constellations of satellites, so altogether they provide pretty good coverage. And you can go back 3 years. So the minute you sign up, you get an archive of 3 years worth of images of your field. That's pretty useful, I would say. Let's go back to summer. So this is a bit more vegetation. And the other thing I wanted to show you is this index. This is what we call plant wetness variability. It shows different information. That's more of the plant water content, or how much water there is in the trees. In this case, these are almonds, not the soil, but in the trees. So dark blue will be trees with more water in them. Light blue, yellow, green, drier trees. It doesn't mean that they're stressed or dead, but they have less water. And there's a lot of things you can learn from these maps. Irrigation problems to begin with. Sometimes soil type, salinity, rocky patches, anything that interferes with the crop water uptake will show here. Even if vegetation looks fine, you will see interesting phenomena here. So you get these images evaluated every few days, and that helps you keep your irrigation performance in good conditions. The other thing, the last thing I want to show here is the high resolution service. So these images that you see here are based on either Sentinel or Landsat. These are two very popular, I think, satellites with 10 meters or 30 feet per pixel. And we also have those satellite, or the third satellite, which is Spot by Airbus, that shows 1.5 meter or 4.5 feet per pixel. And let's look at something from last summer. And you will see the difference. So this shows a much better resolution, much more details. You get these images at least twice per month, but as you can see in the summer in California, you get much more than that, like almost every day in HD image. So that's good coverage. And just to show you the visual side of it, you can really see to the tree level. There's some missing trees here. Again, very useful for crop problem monitoring, crop developmental issues, etc. Very last thing, just to give you a sense of the complexity of the setup. It's not complicated. In fact, you can register yourself online to create your own account. The things you will need to put in, first of all, are the field geometry, at least the outside boundaries. Internal partition to zones is recommended, but not mandatory. And then field info, at least the name, the crop. This has been calculated. Season start, just give us starting the start of the season. If it's almonds, it's going to be bud break. Field crops will be planting date, etc. Information about your irrigation system, and a little bit of information about the soil type or textures taken from the USDA database. So you have a good default, and you can always change it, but that's about it. So not a lot of work in setup, and then usage, again, is relatively simple and friendly. So all you need to do is open the app and you get your irrigation recommendations.
So I did have a couple questions for you, just to clarify. I think you said you were on 150,000 hectares.
Yes.
Correct. Okay. So that's like how many? It's about like 300,000 acres or so.
150. It's 450.
Okay. Gotcha.
450. Yeah. 100,000.
Alrighty. And then what would you say the crop that you have the most coverage on?
I would say tomatoes, some peppers, almonds, avocados, grapes, table grapes, wine grapes, corn, a lot of corn.
Do you have any stuff in lemons or avocados by chance?
Yeah, avocados for sure. Lemons we do have mainly in Latin America.
Okay. Someone had asked if you have any
all of the citrus.
Someone asked if you had any experience in the lemons and avocados, and if you have any feedback for them on those specifically.
Yeah, so I do. So lemons or citrus in general, as well as avocados, are as you know, evergreens, and that makes it well, both easier and maybe more difficult. What I mean by that is you won't see such big variations in vegetation during the season. Like almonds, for example, you have bud break and then vegetation develops, and and then it drops, and there's a lot of action, and vegetation drives water usage. So in lemons, citrus, avocados, it's the vegetation, and therefore the crop coefficient is pretty fixed or steady. Still, there's a lot of movement in terms of ET, and the trees grow, etc. So recommendations will seem maybe more steady. It may seem like they're always more or less the same, but that's natural. And also in terms of crop monitoring, unless you cut down the trees or prune or do some actions like that, you won't see a lot of variation in vegetation. However, if there is a problem in avocados, for example, frost conditions and some diseases may affect vegetation significantly, and then you will see them very quickly in the crop monitoring imagery. So it's a very useful tool for these kind of crops.
Gotcha. Thank you. And just to clarify with people, so with them, kind of like our process of what you guys are pulling from us, you guys are mainly pulling the operational feedback. So what was applied in the field, and then
Correct.
we're not using any sensors to use in that irrigation model from you guys. You guys are solely using that imagery to create that water model and the recommendations. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So building off of the sensors, how has that worked? I mean, if you have any observations you can kind of share with the group or the crowd with benefits of the sensor-free technologies for you guys versus the sensors.
So as I mentioned, I think at the beginning, these are just two different approaches. The different approaches in terms of even agronomy, right? In the sensor-free, we try to measure the content, the soil water content, based on a model that calculates what's going out and what's going in to the field, but not to measure the actual level of water in the pool, right?
Yeah.
And sensors do that. Some are more successful than others, obviously, but so these are two different things. We can't even compare them. They're not apples to apples. But what we did do is there is a way to measure actual crop evapotranspiration in the field. This is a scientific and complicated equipment called the flux towers, and we did thorough research and analysis comparing the outcomes of our model to these towers, and we got to 0.9 R square of 0.9, meaning a very, very high correlation. So that made us very confident that the model is actually representing very well what's going on down in the field. So that's in terms of validating the model. In terms of results, we've seen many cases in different crops and different locations, geographies, in which water use efficiency was improved with Manna compared to either experience-based irrigation scheduling or other technologies. Gotcha. But sure, there are growers, they irrigate so well, and they're so equipped with everything, and they're already very close to the optimum. Adding Manna will give them maybe another angle. So you have the soil truth, and now you have another eye in the sky to keep you safe. So maybe that's the way to do is just to work with both of them together.
Gotcha. Yeah. Do you guys
I
use
see here.
any,
I
what's
see
that?
here a question. Yeah, I see a question here about ordering water for 6 weeks ahead. Um,
Yes.
so, so that's a good question. Thanks, Arthur. Um, so Mana gives you a very detailed recommendation for the next 2 weeks. However, there's another part in the system which I did not show today, which is called water budget. And this will give you the budget for the whole year based on climatology, meaning based on the last 10 years of weather conditions in your field. This is how much the system estimates that you're going to need in every week. So as you go during the season, you can look 4-6 weeks out, and based on the last 10 years of what happened in the last 10 years, you can estimate how much water you're going to need. And then when the recommendations window progress and you get there, you get the exact recommendations of how much and when to use this water, if that answers the question.
Gotcha. Yeah, thank you. I know there was another question about the soil mapping information. Is there any recommendations on soil mapping scale for you guys?
Soil mapping in terms of soil types,
Yes.
if I get it correctly. Okay, so yeah, obviously soil type is very important for the soil water content model. So the smaller unit for this model, for the Manna model, is the zone, the valve level. Okay, anyway, you cannot irrigate differently inside the valve or the zones. So if you can put the soil type in that level, that's great. If you have results from a lab or soil survey you did, then choose the most dominant soil type there is in this zone or in this field, and choose that in your field setup in Manna.
Gotcha. All right. I think my last question was just, is there anything new for Manna or any developments or advances in tech that you guys, have coming out? Anything that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah,
I know that right now
you
we're
guys,
kind of working on the recommendation, throwing the recommendation onto our platform and then having growers actually be able to click a button.
yeah.
I know that's
Well, yeah, we do have. So we specialize in remote sensing science and how to use data from space to help us growers do better our job on the ground. And one of the main problems in this technology is clouds. I don't know if you saw, but there was some cloud icons. So every now and then you have clouds. Clouds interfere with the reflection of light back to the camera on the satellite, and therefore skews the data. And we are looking for ways to improve that. This will improve the frequency of images and coverage of even cloudy areas, etc. What we are developing now and will be available beginning of 2021 is using radar satellites. So not cameras, but they call SAR. They analyze reflection or return of electromagnetic
gotcha.
waves, like radar, and this radar can shape or identify the shape of the crop and return what we're looking to get, which is the vegetation density. This will be, I think, a very, very new thing in the market, using radar technology for agronomic purposes. So that's going to be, I think, great good news at the beginning of the next year.
Just want to say thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you, Havav, for coming today and presenting on Manna.
Thank you, Darren, for having me, and thanks everyone for joining.